I'm Andrea, a passionate DEI advocate and consultant on a mission. Join me in each episode as we celebrate diversity, ignite conversations, and craft workplaces and educational institutions where everyone thrives. This podcast is my commitment to making a meaningful impact on the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So are you ready? Let's get Diversifused. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get Diversifused. I'm your host, Andrea Horton, founder of Diversifused DEI Consulting and a passionate DEI advocate and ally. This episode is all about authenticity in business. My guest today is Elizabeth Miles. Elizabeth is an expert at authenticity in business and is an author, transformational life and business coach, and a podcast host also. She teaches others to dance through and with their fear, overcoming obstacles and challenges to help them transform their lives. After spending nearly 20 years in an abusive and toxic relationship, she finally discovered the power to pivot and shares this story in her books and on the Power to Pivot podcast that she hosts, where she discusses the power of choice. Her books include, first one, This Is Where You Pivot, The Shift from Fear to Freedom. The second one, The Journey to Healing, Love Yourself. And the third one, Connect You, A Guide to Your Authentic Life. So with that, welcome, Elizabeth, to the Get Diversifused podcast. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm so glad that you pinged me on my request. So thank you so much. So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yes, appreciate that. So as you said during the intro, transformational life coach, podcast host, magazine editor, author, but I wasn't always in that space. 20 years in an abusive and toxic relationship. Really struggled for a very long time to find my way out. Spent a very long time feeling stuck, lost, very much alone in the situation that I was in and not really feeling that I could get out. And then eventually I was literally standing on the side of a mountain, completely ridden with fear, and finally realized that I had the power to get myself out. All I had to do was choose again. The day prior to this, I was standing at a campsite and literally heard a voice that said, "This is where you pivot." And I had no idea what that meant. But I knew that I had to pay attention. And so as I'm hiking this mountain, the whole time in the beginning of it, I was talking myself out of the experience. I was telling myself I wasn't good enough. Who am I to be hiking this mountain? I'm not in the best of shape. I'm going to get hurt here. And eventually that voice that said, "This is where you pivot," came back to me. And I realized, oh, wait, there was like this lightning bolt moment of, oh, I'm doing this to myself. I'm the one holding me hostage in this fear. And I can just change it. And once I realized that if I could just shift my focus to something else, and on that mountain, like through that hike, if I could just listen to the trees, focus on the waterfall that was in front of us, enjoy the sunshine, I was able to get out of that fearful moment and get to the next step. And once I got back, kissing the ground that I was finally, off the mountain, I realized that I could apply this to so many areas of my life. And within 6 months, I was out of that toxic relationship and on the road to healing. So after 20 years of feeling completely stuck, was finally able to make that shift.
That's a powerful story. And it explains very well the fear that people who are in toxic relationships feel all the time, because it is scary to leave the unknown to even though the relationship that someone may be in is toxic and unhealthy, it's what they know, and so it's what they're comfortable with to a certain extent. They're comfortable with the uncomfortableness and that fear, and to step out of the comfort zone and have that courage to step out of the comfort zone is scary for a lot of people, and that goes more than being in toxic relationships. It's even in workplaces where you're self-doubting yourself, you're bad talking yourself. And a lot of women tend to do this more than men, and marginalized populations as well. They talk themselves out of it. It's like, oh, they're not going to want to promote me, or they're going to think my idea is stupid, or someone else is going to take credit for it. They fear stepping out of their comfort zone to advocate for themselves,
Yes.
and to be their best selves, and do what they know that they can do. So
Yes,
that's
and I
powerful.
love that you mentioned the business side of it, because I realized too how the mindset that I was bringing and showing up in it to work was impacting how I was performing. And I was almost creating my own glass ceiling for myself. Forget the one that, society puts on women, right? It exists for sure, but it didn't help when I was also imposing my own ceiling for myself. And having the revelation of the power to pivot, and the fact that I realized I could shift that focus and shift that energy, and it can created a completely different situation. It doesn't take away the fear, right? The fear is still there. The fear is real. And I'm not saying like, just make another choice and it magically goes away. No. But with time and practice, you learn how to be mindful of it and aware, and that awareness helps you dance with it, because on the other side of that fear, there is a transformation. There's that new level for you. You're going to learn something coming through that pivotal moment, whether that's in a relationship, in a business, in your workplace, in your health. It goes for any part of your life.
I agree. And I love that you said that you put your own glass ceiling there, and a lot of people tend to do that, and because of that fear of the unknown, for any reason. And I also love that you mentioned that when you went to work, you're 100% yourself. It affected your mentality from how you were feeling in your household, came through in your work and in all your relationships, most likely, in and outside work. And that's something that leaders and team members and organizations need to be aware of. They need to actively listen to their colleagues, actively observe, not stalk or or anything like that, but follow them around, but nothing like that. But observe and actively listen, and listen to different cues and stuff that may be signs of situations like unhealthy relationships outside of the workplace. Not that it's your place to actually get involved and do something about it, but you can be there to talk, if that your colleague or friend, if they are a friend, needs someone to talk to, because talking is usually the first step. And
I'm so glad you mentioned that. And here's why. So I was so afraid to ask for help. And I tried very, very hard to mask what was going on at home, so nobody knew. And that showed up for me as trying to do more, work more hours. I'm going to be that team member that, I got it, right? After the fact, so many people came up to me and said, "Oh my God, what are you doing? You look so different. You're glowing." Oh, wow. What was going on? I knew I felt like maybe there was something going on. I wish somebody had come up to me and said, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And even, I don't know at what point, and if I would have been willing to open up in the
Yeah.
workplace, but knowing that somebody cared would have gone a long way. And, you know, at the same time, do I recognize that I had the power to ask for help? I do now. But when you're in that space, it's very hard to feel that support when you're coming from a place of already feeling down about you and down about that situation. So I agree, you know, being aware of those cues in the workplace, tuning in to your team, and you're not there to solve everybody's problems as a leader, but you are there to support and provide resources. And, you know, as a leader, your vision is only going to go as far as your team can take you. It is my job as a leader to support my team and build them up. And through that, you know, we win and grow together.
Definitely.
I don't want anybody on my team to walk through life feeling that they have to go through something alone, or feel afraid or scared to ask me for help. Because no one should walk through life alone.
I agree. And as a leader, that's where it's very important to be an inclusive leader, to be a servant leader, because that's where it helps you lay that foundation of trust with your team. And if you have that trust, then the chances of somebody coming to you in a one-on-one meeting, not in a group meeting, but in a one-on-one meeting, which leaders should be having with their team members, increase a little bit. But as you said, you were feeling down, and many people in toxic relationships, that's how the person who's being the abuser, that's how they keep you in the abusive relationship. They take away all your self-esteem, all your self-confidence, and they just strip it away. And they try also to, many of them also try to take away your support, your outside support systems as well. So you do feel alone, and you do feel very vulnerable. And no matter where you go, whether it's to school or to the workplace or to the grocery store, you feel alone, and so people in situations like this tend to, as you said, put on that mask of, I'm fine, everything's fine, this is, everything's hunky-dory. And because they're already feeling bad about themselves, and they don't want others to judge them. And as people, we tend to do that. We tend to judge, and, well, why don't you just leave? It's so much harder. If you've never been in a situation like that, then, I mean, and every situation is different, but if you've never been in a similar situation like that, then you have nothing to compare it to, except maybe what Hollywood shows us in movies, which is, as we all know, not always accurate. So it's difficult to take that first step and ask for help. And as you said, it's like you weren't even sure if you would have. But now
there's a nudge of fear with it, right? Like the fear of being judged, the fear of that criticism that comes with it. But again, on the other side of that fear is your freedom. And that looks very different for a lot of people, what freedom means and feels like. But taking that first step and allowing yourself to make that pivot, something different is going to come out of that situation in one way or another. And does that mean, again, it doesn't mean everything's perfect on the other side. It just means that one little shift is happening and you are open to it. I love what you said too about, you had just mentioned it, and
that happens to me all the time.
It escaped me, but I was like, wait, I want to, judgment, right? So with the judgment also comes from fear. and our own fear. And I feel it's important to mention in leadership, especially when we have those conversations about diversity, is, a lot of people are afraid of asking and being too vulnerable. There's so many fears in the workplace, right? Like there's the fear of vulnerability, the fear of judgment, the fear of opening up, the fear of not making money, whether you're at the top or not at the top of the pyramid, right? But ultimately, if we just set that aside and remember that business is about people, we will be in a much better place. When, especially related to the work that you're doing with diversity and inclusion, and it's important to take the time to get to know your team. I don't believe in leaders only talking to their team when something's wrong. I remember being in a situation prior to being in business where I remember going to talk to a team member and they thought that they were in trouble because I went to have a conversation with them. And I was like, no. I really just want to see how your day was. Are you doing okay? Is there anything you need from me? Are you okay? And again, that will go a long way to them opening up to you when there is something seriously wrong. If you make that connection ahead of time and from the start, let them know you're there to support them from the beginning. They will go further for you when they know that you have their back.
I agree. And when you do that, and it doesn't have to be on a daily basis, maybe a weekly or bi-weekly, but you should be also, as I said earlier, having at least weekly or bi-weekly one-on-ones with your team. Because then if they are having a really bad day, maybe something happened even worse at home, you'll notice the change, and you'll be able to pick up on the cues because you know how they usually are, how they usually act and everything. And I'll but you had mentioned a few things also, like one, the getting to know your teams. It reminded me of when I was at university way back when, and I was in Air Force ROTC, and my commanders and the whole battalion had TGIFs. So that's God, it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Whatever, however you want to say it, and it would be at a different restaurants that had a very social atmosphere, and it was optional. You didn't have to go, but the leaders were always there. Not just the main leaders, the instructors that were like officers, but also the cadet officers who were in running the battalion and everything, because it was a way to step out of that, commanding, like where they're telling you what to do all the time. I step out of that zone and get to know them as people. They were in their regular clothes and shorts or whatever it was, and it just broke down that wall. And of course, the first few times you're still kind of hesitant, but if you went numerous times, you eventually got to talk to them and know them as people. But so that's something that other organizations I've been to also do. They had their version of TGIS, maybe not every week, but for similar things like that. So camaraderie, not really camaraderie, but getting to know everybody outside of work a little bit as people, as humans, that human-centeredness can happen. And you had also mentioned a little while ago, a few minutes ago, about when you finally did make the change, people were saying, "Wow, you're glowing. What's different?" And that lets me know that your mental health improved.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, because the toxic relationships affect people's mental health. And so when one of your colleagues or classmates or something like that walks into the room, don't judge. Like if they're in a bad mood, you don't know what happened to them, or if they're like don't touch me or something like that, you don't know what happened to them. So don't judge and automatically go to the negative, like humans, we as humans tend to do. It's just our nature. Stop, think, and stop and think before you react or say something. And always start with the human centeredness, as you had said. Are you okay? Is everything okay? You look upset today. And it's up to the other person to actually engage in conversation or not. So
yeah, they may say they're fine, but I mean,
mm-hmm.
they know if they are or not.
Yeah.
It's really, it becomes at that point, there's a door that opens up, right? Like you're inviting them to make a different choice for themselves.
Yeah.
And you are also making a different choice for yourself and how you show up to that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really important to remember that we are all on this big ride of life together.
Yep.
And we're all doing the best we can with where we are. And
Yes.
it's important for me to share that because there was a lot of judgment in my life from me and towards me. Breaking down that barrier is how we will move forward together as a society. And we will get further together. We are stronger in numbers than we could ever be siloed.
Yeah.
And just remembering that somebody's potentially going through something and they're just trying to get through the day
mm-hmm.
is important.
Yeah.
Even if they don't share with you what's going on, like you said, that human side, just bring a place of love and compassion to the day, to that moment, will go a long way.
It will. It will. And it's also important to remember that it's not just women in toxic relationships, it's men too. And men tend to be even more hush hush about it because they are embarrassed. It makes them emasculated, or not. Is that the word? Emasculate? No, not
Yeah,
they feel not masculine.
Yeah, you're good.
So, and I'm like,
words are hard on Saturday morning.
They are. Oh my gosh. So they feel less of a man, and that they'll be judged because they're not manly or something. So reports from men are significantly lower than those from women, but it happens to both. And I want to say that it happens more to women, yes, but it also happens to our male our male, the men in the room as well. So
Absolutely.
so it's important to, as we said before, don't judge, start from the human centered point. So with that, let's start with our first question. I'm loving this conversation, by the way, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
How do you ensure diversity and inclusion are integral to your business practices and collaborations with the small business community?
So I love this question. Diversity and inclusion to me are so important because when we allow diversity and inclusion in, we can create so much more. Looking at diverse backgrounds, diverse populations, we're going to get so many more great ideas. And to me, for business, it starts with me and having that awareness, but then infusing that, especially in the onboarding and recruiting process. I look at skills. I look at the person. It's about understanding that creativeness in the business is going to come from those different, everybody, everybody's welcome at the table here. And aligning with people, like if you take away the outer, and focus on the alignment with your mission, let those new ideas flow in, let the diversity in from multiple populations and backgrounds, because like I said, that's how your business will grow and thrive, because you're welcoming new ideas. And it's really easy for me, could be easy for me to just sit and go, I have the best way. This is my business, my vision. And granted, I might have started the business, but as as we grow and we change and the world changes, like, it's very important to remember that we have to keep pivoting in our business too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why infusing and making sure that you have a diverse population working with you is so important, because the more that you welcome that and embrace that, you're going to get so much more from that.
I agree. I
And
love that you kept. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just think that it's about getting your message and your purpose out there, right? And having that creative flow is going to allow you to do that so much more powerfully when you are aligned. The biggest thing is making sure you're bringing people on that are aligned with your mission above everything else. Allowing them to bring their authentic self, and that includes their background and their knowledge and their experience, will help you share your message more.
I agree. And I love that you kept using the word infusing, because that's where the name of my consulting business came from, Diversifuse. So fusing diversity into a larger entity. And so like play on words. And I love that you had said when you're bringing people onto your team, that you look at the skills. It reminded me of when I was in middle school, my orchestra teacher, he used to do blind auditions. So we would be given numbers. He wouldn't know who was coming up. He knew it was like the second violin section, the first violin section, or the cellos. He knew what instrument it was, which section. But we were all given numbers and to compete for the chairs. And we played. He had his back. He sat behind. With his back to us. And we were all behind him, and we would just come up. He's like, okay, number, and we couldn't talk, number so and so. We would play the same excerpt, and he would make notes, and based on our skills and how we played. And so he didn't know who it was, because he did have his favorites. Every teacher does. And but it made it. It took out that as much of the bias as possible, and all the students in the orchestra felt that it was fair, because he didn't know who it was. So and it's sort of like the same in recruitment strategies, diverse recruitment strategies. Sometimes they do the blind recruitment, where they take the name and everything off, all identifying type of information, to where they just look at the skill sets on the resumes and the applications. That's all the recruiters see. Some more organizations are starting to do strategies like that, which is lovely, because as we all know, there's name discrimination, there's age discrimination. Organizations don't admit it, because they always put another reason for declining. But there are things like that. I mean, those biases still happen. And there are strategies to help minimize those biases from happening. So I love that you said that you look at the skills, you look at the what they can bring to the table. So
there has to be that alignment. And I think it's just the fact that more and more businesses are getting on board with that blind recruitment style is a good sign. I think as in leadership roles, it's extremely important to be aware, like have that self-awareness for your own bias. You got to check that bias at the door, like, but you need to be aware of where your triggers might be, because it could very easily and quickly impact your business in a way that would be detrimental.
Because we're comfortable with people and things that we're familiar with, and so it's just natural. So but that's limiting ourselves, and it's important, as you had said, to self-assess. So I talk about this in a few of my other podcasts where with the Harvard implicit bias assessments, which are free and on the internet, and I'll put it again in the summary of our podcast today. But so the link to those tests, it gives you all different types of self-assessment tests on different types of implicit bias, from homosexuality to gender to age to religion. There's like 30 plus implicit bias tests on this website, and it's just very eye-opening when you take them. You're like, oh, even the people who are for diversity, inclusion, equity, accessibility, everybody has implicit biases. Everybody does. It's natural too. So if you do take the test, I'm going to put the link in. If you do end up taking the test, don't get upset. It's just, as you had said, you become aware of your tendencies. And so when you're in situations, decision-making situations and everything, you can be more aware of of how to make a better decision. As we had said before, stop, think, then act. And it's also important, as you had said earlier, that businesses need to grow. It's also good practice to check up every few years, maybe 5-10 years, on your mission, your vision, your values. Update them with the times, and also as your business is growing and expanding and changing. Sometimes your mission is going to change a little bit, tweak it, and your vision and values will change a little bit, but hopefully for the better. But it's always good practice to review those items and update policies.
I think it's important too to remember that more than likely with those assessments, it's going to trigger you. Like you're likely going to get upset when you see the results and it tells you, this is where your bias is, and you're going to go, nah, that's not true. That's not me.
I have tons of friends who are like,
pay attention to that reaction, because that's telling you something right there. But having that mindfulness is so important. And I'm a big advocate. And when I'm working with clients to like getting into business, allow yourself to be flexible.
Yes.
We have to revisit our mission, to your point. We have to revisit our policies. Times change, regulations change, business plans are not meant. This is so funny because I went to business school. I've run a business. One of the first things they teach you, right, is about your business plan.
Yep.
Your business plan is a fluid document. Do not run into the trap that a lot of entrepreneurs run into and go, well, that's not in my business plan. Who cares? It is your business.
Exactly. Exactly. And, there's things that when you're making your business plan, putting together, there's things you may not have even thought of. Or you definitely would not have thought of. Nobody knows everything. And so that's why these documents have to be fluid and ever changing. Edit it. Take something out, add something in.
It's yours.
Exactly.
I also do encourage, though, to look at your company's diversity, equity, and inclusion policies as part of that initial mission statement. As you're getting started, how can you embrace that as part of your plan to allow more people, to allow access, to allow more people to the creative mission and the impact that you want to make? You're getting into business because you feel like you have a solution to a problem that somebody is experiencing in the world. Well, how can you align with more people to help spread that message? Like, do it from the start, because it's a lot easier to maintain, sustain, and grow with that in your business than it is to try to make a big pivot later on down the line and go, oh, we screwed up. I mean, granted, there's something to be said about doing that. Sometimes in business you make a miss, and that's okay. But if you can embrace that from the very start, you will set yourself up for success.
I agree. And if you have to rebrand.
Yes.
So yeah, and I couldn't agree more. So let's go to our next question. In what ways do you address and navigate systemic barriers to entrepreneurship for marginalized communities in your work? It's a tough
I
one.
think about, that's a really good question. Are you asking, can you sort of reframe the question for me and help me understand what you're looking for?
Sure. So the original question was, in what ways do you address and navigate systemic barriers to entrepreneurship for marginalized communities? So minorities, historically marginalized populations, Blacks, Hispanics, LGBTQ plus, individuals with disabilities, veterans. How, if someone from that population, one of those communities, wants to start a business, there's additional barriers that they may face that someone who is from, as we say, the more privileged communities may not face when they're wanting to start a business, like even funding, getting backed by VCs if they're a startup, or getting a small business loan if they're going that way, and discrimination, from the community at large. Like I think of like World War II with the Jewish owned businesses, which still happen today, and sadly, in some parts of the world, the hatred and discrimination. So individuals who are in marginalized communities, such as those who want to start a business, how do you help them think through any additional struggles and challenges they may face to start that business and get it up and running, that someone from a more privileged community population may not have to think of or deal with?
So it comes down to being an advocate for resources, right? And helping them. Is there a way that you can shift your plan to overcome the barrier? And I say that as someone who, so my first business before March 4th Media was a bakery business, right?
Ooh.
And I had obstacle after obstacle trying to get started because I couldn't get the funding. It seemed like no matter what I did, I just could not get traction. And I don't, that for various reasons, but what it allowed me to do was, I could have given up,
Yeah.
but that was not an option for me. And so I ensure that I'm a resource. I'm not going to let you give up. If you have a dream, if you have a message to share with the world, it does not and should not matter what background you come from. You have to share that message, right? So let's take a step back, breathe a minute, because it's very stressful when
Yes.
you're told no, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a way that you can overcome that barrier with a shift? And for me, that shift was, okay, I'm not going to be able to open my business in this framework right now. Okay, what can I do? Let's focus on that. And that allowed me to take my business plan, and instead of opening this 2,000 square foot cafe that I had envisioned, to finding a business incubator where it was more affordable. I was paying like $450 a month in rent for my 10 by 10 space, but it was my space. I had all the tools and supplies I needed, and I could get started. Within 6 months to a year, I had built the business enough that I could buy another business and move into their space.
Oh, nice.
So it's about finding ways to work. Sometimes you kind of have to work around it. Like, and I'm not saying that there's the struggle's not there, and I'm not saying it's right that it's there. I'm saying don't let it stop you. And as I work with other entrepreneurs, people who want to get started, whether it's in business or with a podcast or writing a book, don't let that barrier stop you dead in your tracks. It can very easily do that. And there's going to be days when you're going to get frustrated and you're going to want to quit. That's the time you have to dig in. And there's going to be something else that will work instead. Because if that mission, if you feel strongly about that mission and your message, you have to share it. We don't have to hold this really tight focus of how it's going to happen. We can relax a little bit and allow it. And if I had just said, no, I'm going to open in the way that I want to do it, everybody was telling me no. And I had this sort of, I had to find another way. Let your passion be bigger than the no to keep you going. And I'm a huge advocate for you don't have to do it the expensive way in the beginning. You can build yourself up so that the next time there is not going to be a no. You can show your passion and support your business, and then go back and try again and let your work speak for itself.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Sometimes starting small is better too, because that's your learning experience. That's your like, okay, this didn't work, let's try this. Okay, that didn't work, let's try this. But yeah, I also love that you brought in the incubators. Incubators are I don't know if they're probably all over the world, but I know they're all over the nation, and there's more popping up because it helps those small entrepreneurs, those startups, have a separate space outside the home to where they can just focus on their business. And you just rent a little space. Could be a small office, like a little small office room, or it could be if it's more of a trade type of a position, startup that you have, a company that you're building. It could be more of an open space where you can put what you need. And it's a great support system because you get to learn, you get to meet and talk to the other entrepreneurs in the room, because there's usually like a few common spaces where, eating spaces or relaxing lounges and stuff in these incubators where you can talk with each other and get to know each other. And that's where more ideas happen, and like, and suggestions for improvement. And it's a great space to start a business. But we're not saying that that's the only place you like go to incubator, but it is a great place to start if you are hitting a lot of obstacles, because it is a lot cheaper to start that way also.
I think there's the co-working spaces too, like they're huge because, especially in a situation like this, right, that you're asking about, like you said, it's going to bring creative ideas. It's also going to bring collaboration and networking that you could never have possibly imagined. In the when I was first in the bakery, I did a lot of networking events, and you meet so many people in those early days. Like, you will quickly also start to find your voice. You're sharing your message with more people. And to the point that you said about the newness and the inexperience, had I opened in the vision that I had, oh my God, I had no idea. I had baked and cooked my whole life. I went to culinary school, but it was not. When I started and opened my doors, there were a lot of pitfalls that I did not see coming, and business school does not prepare you for.
No, they do the theoretical framework.
Right. So it's important, like, just let yourself be clunky with it in the beginning and imperfect, but the more you can embrace that and go seek those other support systems and people, network, share, let that guide you. Like, you'll find a mentor that's going to walk in your path one day, and you're going to be like, I'm going to follow. Like, what did you do? Let yourself have that support. There's that other side of it, like allowing it to happen. And again, you could get very stuck in the no, and no one's going to do this for me. There's almost that like a victim mentality. But if you let that if you get stuck there, you will shut yourself down before you even start. Let yourself be open to having the support system, because there are going to be people willing and ready to support you.
Yep. And you'll also find out that there's a lot of other minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs, and it's and they'll give you strategies also that things that they learned, and awesome. All right,
and so they're going to be willing to support you.
Yes, exactly, and introduce you to people if you make a good impression on them. But you have to get yourself out there and socialize and network and all. Not be afraid to speak and advocate for yourself and your passion, and that's for any entrepreneur, not just individuals from marginalized communities. Whether you're a female entrepreneur or a Black woman entrepreneur, or someone of the Muslim religion who's an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. So next question, can you share examples of how embracing diversity has contributed to the success and innovation of your own business ventures?
Oh, yes. So everybody's welcome at the table.
That's great.
Everybody is welcome. So again, it comes down to alignment. And, I will love to work with everyone. Like, I get so excited when I get to help somebody share their message and their mission, either through the podcast or the magazine. And that has allowed it to grow. Like, the success of the Power to Pivot podcast, I don't just interview one person. That's not what we're about. I'm here for the passionate entrepreneur, the person that's got a big mission and message to share, and you need a place to share it. You want to do good for the world, and I align with those who are here to genuinely share from a place of love. And that is how the business has grown. That is a direct result of sharing through love and sharing from a place of, I want to help the world. The world's not okay the way it is right now. It could be better. And everyone, like I said, everyone's welcome at the table. Like, if you are a woman, Black, Hispanic, we could go down the whole list, right? You have something to share with the world, and I'm here to help you share it. Let's share it together. I'm here to support you with that. And for other people, the other side of the table. So, and this is where I say that March 4th Media is about creating new conversations. Because if we start sitting down at the table together and we have an honest conversation and bring it back to the human side, like you have mentioned earlier, we're going to realize that we're very similar. We're people. Let's take away the stigma of the labels that we assign to everybody, to other people. Take away the bias that we are bringing to the table. Let's just have a conversation and get to know each other. From there, we could change the freaking world.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
That is how I have built the same thing with my bakery business, right? Everyone's welcome. I would do networking events and different types of events in my store. And when I moved into my storefront, that's how I built the business. And everybody was welcome. Embracing, like, we're going through this entrepreneur small business venture together. Let's take each other's hand and understand what we can do to support each other. I remember, I'll never forget this. I had a person come visit me one day. She wanted to do a networking meeting with me.
Mm-hmm.
And really what she wanted to do was sell me on a bunch of services that I didn't
Oh.
want.
Oh.
But she said to me, what's your vision for this space? And I'm like, I want a community-minded space. Everyone's welcome and everyone's open. And she's turned to me and she goes, with all due respect, that sounds really great, but you're new in business and you need to make money.
Mm.
And that's not going to be the way you make money. And I looked at her and I went,
Wow.
thank you very much for your opinion.
Yeah.
Have a great day. It didn't go like that exactly. But when she left, I just was like, who the heck is she to tell me how to run my business? And
Yeah.
I did it my way anyway. And guess what? I was very successful doing it my way. I know and knew then that my business was not, my profits were going to be driven by the way I treated other people. And I was going to treat people fairly and bring them a good experience. And it goes back to servant leadership as well. When you focus on that, you will go so much farther. So the success directly correlates with allowing that diversity. And we're going to grow together. We're here to rise. I'm not here to compete. I mean, yes, you are, right? I love to talk about the competitive nature of business and business strategy. That's there is a space for that. But I am also here and believe that we get to the top together and there's room at the top for everyone.
Yeah.
How you go about that, we all get to make that choice.
Yeah. I agree. Wow. Yeah, I that is very empowering and impactful to me because I have my vision and I my way, I have the way I'd like my business to go. And I'm happy to hear that if I stick with what I love and what I believe and all, there's opportunity. And because I mean, people are people and we all want to belong and feel valued and respected and heard and all. And I believe if you emulate that and you walk that walk, people will notice, and no matter what type of business you're in.
Yes.
And yeah, and people are attracted to that, where they feel comfortable, where they feel welcomed and a part of the community. And if you start putting barriers up, you're just putting barriers up on your own business and your own success and expansion and or your brand. So it's
yes,
and that's not good, at least in my eyes. So
nope, we don't need to limit it. The world's hard enough, right? Like,
exactly.
You don't need to limit your business.
Yeah.
And I think just remember why you got started. And also remember, if they say no, they're just not for you. That doesn't mean other people are not. Like, not everybody right now, you're not speaking their language, and that's okay.
Yep. Yeah.
And there's always millions of other people to talk to. Exactly.
You just got to get yourself out there and keep showing up. And for marginalized communities, or for anybody who gets a no in their face or a door slam in their face, it does affect the self-esteem and the self-confidence and starts putting doubt in our minds. But you got to keep showing up. You got to keep advocating for what you're passionate about and what you believe in. And things will eventually happen. You'll eventually find a way. One thing I want to say with that, right? Every time the door gets slammed in your face, there's going to be the temptation to change who you are to try to get that yes. And I caution you, right? Like, yes, don't do that. Don't diminish your message. I tried it. It doesn't work. The more and you're not happy too when you do right that. You are left completely unfulfilled. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, like, it becomes this cycle of like not even knowing who you are anymore.
because you keep trying to change to fit somebody else's mold. Don't put yourself in somebody else's box. Don't let them do that to you. It's really easy to let that happen. Be aware of that and try to be mindful of that. And if you need help with that, there are people that can support you with it. But the temptation is going to be there. Don't let it take you over.
I'm so glad you said that, because we as people tend to want to feel like we belong. And so a lot of us do mask certain parts of our identity to fit that mold, or pretend to be something that we're not. And it takes a toll on your mental health and your well-being and your overall happiness. So be true to yourselves. Yes. So what strategies do you employ to create an inclusive and supportive environment for, cannot really talk today. So what strategies do you employ to create an inclusive and supportive environment for underrepresented entrepreneurs within your network?
Again, it comes down to alignment, and everyone's welcome. I want to partner with those people who are out there doing good for the world. And I also come from a place of curiosity, because I don't know and I don't understand everything about other cultures and other populations and other struggles, right? I'm not going to pretend like I do, but I want to know, because I want to help. And that is how I tell me what's going on. Let's work through it together. And how can I help change that? But then also in my network, if I know someone that can help you, I'm going to make sure that there's an introduction. We can all get there. And we've said this, right? There's room at the top for everybody.
Yeah.
The more if I know somebody in my network can give you the tools that you need, let's make it happen. Because, and that's why the alignment piece is so important. Because if you know the types of businesses and the types of people that you want to align with, your community will grow around that. And so you will have people that are also willing to support new people in the community, and they will embrace them because they've been there too. They understand, and they have the same mission in mind. Yeah. So it's about making sure that we align ourselves. There's that saying, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around with most.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
Well, the same is true in your business. Make sure that you are surrounding yourself with supportive people who align with where you want to take your message. And that's not saying that they don't have to work for you to do that. I love the work that you're doing in your business. I think your mission is incredible, and I think it's needed in the world today. I don't have to work for you to support you.
That's true.
So I just think making sure that you're setting yourself up with a network, and come into the March 4th network, right? Or your network, and let the community embrace you. And I guess as I say that, I realize some people could be listening and going, yeah, that sounds kind of kumbaya-y and whatever. But it makes a difference when you get off a call with someone and they're cheering you on. They may also be able to help you spot potential pitfalls and obstacles that you'll go through. That's true. But that's okay. Let them come from a place of love and support. You will know the difference. You will be able to feel that difference. Let that happen. Let yourself feel out who's for you and who's not.
I agree. And never burn any bridges, because you never know who someone may be in the future or who they know. So never burn bridges also. So networking is very important, and being your authentic self. So before we wrap up today, Well, one, I loved this conversation. I wish we could talk longer.
I know. I appreciate this conversation so
Yeah.
much and the opportunity.
Thank you so much. So how can people get a hold of you if they want to connect with you or purchase any of your books, or if they want to get you for to be on their podcast or at their speaking engagement, or if they want
Yes,
to do business with you?
absolutely. Thank you. So the easiest
Yeah.
place is the website, which is www.thisiswhereyoupivot.com. It's all one word. Thisiswhereyoupivot.com. You'll find March 4th, the magazine. You'll find the podcast. You'll find me. We're on social media, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, March 4th Media Company. Can also find me there. And also, if I can share this,
Sure.
I have 2 freebies available, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one, if you are interested in the power to pivot and understanding where this came from and the power that it had and can have for you, there's a free chapter of the book, This Is Where You Pivot, which was my first book. It's available at thisiswhereyoupivot.com/chapter preview. Please go. Love to share how powerful this transformation can be. It's literally as simple as making another choice. The other is the magazine. Again, on the website, if you go to thisiswhereyoupivot.com, scroll to the bottom, there's a free issue of March 4th, the magazine. We're giving away our very first issue that dropped last February. Just as an intro so that you can see what March 4th, the magazine is all about. We've grown a bit since that first issue. We've learned a lot. But it is something that it gets the conversation started. You'll see sort of what every issue is about. So I invite everyone, please check it out.
Cool. And I will put all that, this wonderful information that you just said, Elizabeth, on the last slide of our podcast, since this is a video podcast. So, and I'll also put it for you listeners, I'll also put it in the summary of the podcast as well. So with the links and everything, so you won't have to like try to write things down while you're listening. So it's in the summary and it's on the at the end of the podcast on the last one of the last slides. So,
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome, Elizabeth. And I really enjoyed this conversation, as I said. And before we end today, let's talk about some key takeaways that for our listeners. So Elizabeth and I talked about resilience and authenticity. We talked about Elizabeth's journey from adversity to success, highlighting the importance of resilience and authenticity in entrepreneurship. And we talked about how we should be embracing challenges because they can lead to personal and professional growth. We also talked about empowerment and collaboration. We talked about the power of those in the small business community and Elizabeth's passion for fostering collaboration that underscores the importance of supporting and uplifting fellow entrepreneurs. And we talked about navigating fear and growth. Very, very important. We talked about the concept of navigating fear as an opportunity for growth in business. We talked about Elizabeth's approach to dancing with fear, which I love that term, which offers valuable insights into overcoming obstacles and seizing opportunities for success. We also talked about many other wonderful things about challenges and strategies that leaders and entrepreneurs can do to be successful. Some possible next steps for our listeners: reflect on your own journey and identify areas where fear may be hindering your entrepreneurial growth. Not just fear, but also biases. So I will be putting that Harvard implicit biases assessments, the link to those in the summary as well. Explore resources and support networks within your community that promote diversity, inclusion, and collaboration. So as Elizabeth and I were talking about the incubators, but not just incubators, networking events at large. And consider reaching out to Elizabeth or similar mentors for guidance and support in navigating challenges and embracing opportunities in your business endeavors. So do you have anything to add on any key takeaways or possible next steps for our listeners, Elizabeth?
No, that was a great summary of what we talked about. But if I can, I just want to share. So we wrap up our podcast, the Power to Pivot podcast, with this phrase if I can share it.
Sure, yeah.
You are never stuck, you are never lost, and you are never, ever alone. At any given moment, you can use your power to pivot, make a new choice, and start again.
I love that. I love that. And that is so true. Never feel like you can't speak to somebody, because there are people out there that want to help. And I love that.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth. And listeners, this podcast episode, if you are listening, was launched on April 25th. And I will be marketing it as such prior to that date. But stay tuned for our next episodes as well, which are just as engaging. Thank you, listeners. I hope to see you next time. Bye. Go out there and make a difference. And as always, for more strategies on building inclusive workplaces and communities, check out Diversifuse. We're here to guide you on your DEI journey. Make sure to visit our website at diversifused.com and follow us on social media for the latest happenings, blog posts, tips, and events.